She woke up to the soft light of the morning, the kind that crept quietly through the thin curtains and filled the room with a gentle glow. Her small apartment smelled faintly of coffee, the lingering scent from the cup she had left on the nightstand the evening before. She stretched, feeling the quiet ache of muscles that were still waking up, and glanced at the little piano in the corner of the living room. It was old, scratched in places, but it had been her companion for years. Every key told a story, even if only she could remember each one. Music had always been a part of her life, though she had never seen it as anything more than a private comfort. In school, she had learned the basics, the simple tunes and the easy songs that anyone could play if they practiced long enough. But after she left, life had pulled her in different directions. Bills, work, and the endless list of small responsibilities had left little room for passion. Still, she always came back to the piano, even if it was just for a few minutes each day. Sitting down and letting her fingers wander across the keys felt like returning home. That morning, she brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window, letting the sunlight warm her face. The city was just beginning to wake, the distant hum of traffic mingling with the occasional bird song. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift. Thoughts of the day ahead faded, replaced by memories of simpler times. She remembered sitting on the old bench at the community center, her fingers clumsily finding the right notes, her heart swelling every time she managed to play a song from start to finish without mistakes. She smiled softly at herself, realizing that those small victories had meant everything to her back then. Life had become so complicated, but music had remained a constant thread, unchanging and forgiving. She poured the tea into a mug and carried it over to the piano. The wooden floor creaked under her weight, and she felt a familiar calm settle over her as she sat down on the bench. Her fingers hovered over the keys, uncertain at first. She didn't have a plan, didn't have a song in mind. Sometimes the best music came from just letting the fingers move and seeing where they went. She pressed a key gently, then another, the sound filling the quiet room. It was simple, unremarkable, but it felt right. She played a few more notes, experimenting with small patterns, allowing herself to get lost in the rhythm and the feel of the keys beneath her fingers. She had always thought of herself as someone who played simple music. Not bad, but nothing extraordinary. Her friends had often praised her gently, encouraging her to try harder, to push herself, but she had never felt the need. Music was her sanctuary, not a competition. Still, there was a quiet longing, a desire to see what could happen if she let herself go a little further. She had never shared that part of herself with anyone, and the thought made her heart race a little. The morning passed slowly, unnoticed. She played, paused, sipped her tea, and then played again. Each note seemed to echo a little deeper in the room, resonating with a part of her that had been quiet for too long. She tried to remember some of the songs she had learned years ago, but her mind wandered, and soon the music she was creating was entirely her own. It was messy in parts, clumsy in others, but it had a strange kind of beauty that she hadn't expected. She felt a thrill she hadn't felt in years. A knock at the door startled her. She hadn't realized how absorbed she had been. It was a neighbor holding a package that had been delivered. She thanked them, feeling a little embarrassed at how lost she had been in her music. As she closed the door, she realized that she hadn't noticed time passing. The sun had shifted in the sky, and the city outside was alive with movement. She took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Music had always been her private world, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of connection to the outside world as well. She returned to the piano, feeling a new sense of curiosity. What if she tried something different? Something she had never attempted before? She started with a simple melody, one she had played countless times, but this time she added small variations, subtle changes that felt natural under her fingers. She didn't think about whether it was good or bad. She just played. And as she did, she noticed something she hadn't felt before. A sense of creation, of building something from nothing, something that was entirely hers. Hours passed, though she barely noticed. The sun moved across the sky, shadows shifting in the room, but she remained at the piano. She experimented with rhythms, tried different combinations of notes, and allowed herself to make mistakes. Each mistake was a lesson, a step closer to something she couldn't quite name yet. She was surprised by how much joy it brought her, how alive she felt in those moments. The simple music she had always played was evolving into something richer, something unexpected. Her phone buzzed with messages, reminders of responsibilities and errands, but she ignored them. For once, nothing else mattered. She was immersed in the music, in the flow of creation. She noticed how her fingers moved with increasing confidence, how her ideas seemed to grow naturally from one note to the next. It was as if the piano had been waiting for her to unlock something, and now she was finally beginning to understand. As evening approached, she finally leaned back and let her hands rest. The room was filled with the echoes of the music she had created, a mixture of simple beginnings and surprising complexity. She felt a sense of pride and wonder, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. The music was still hers alone, but it carried a promise of something greater, a hint of potential she had never dared to imagine. That night, she lay in bed, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. Her mind replayed the melodies she had discovered, each one carrying a piece of her spirit. She realized that she had taken a small, simple step, but it had opened a door to a world she hadn't known was waiting. For the first time, she felt that perhaps her music could mean something more, that the simple tunes she had always played might have the power to touch others, to create a connection beyond her small room. She closed her eyes, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Tomorrow she would play again, and perhaps she would push a little further. She didn't know where it would lead, but she was ready to find out. The ordinary morning had turned into an extraordinary day, not because of anything dramatic, but because she had allowed herself to create, to explore, and to believe, even a little, in her own hidden potential. The next morning, she woke with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Her fingers itched to find the keys again, to explore the melodies that had appeared the day before. She dressed quickly and moved toward the piano, her steps light, as though she were heading into an adventure rather than a familiar corner of her own apartment. The sunlight poured in through the window, casting long shadows on the floor, and she could feel the warmth pushing her forward. She didn't know exactly what she wanted to play, only that she had to start somewhere. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment, almost afraid to break the silence. Then she pressed the first note, and the sound filled the room like a small, bright spark. She followed it with another, and another, letting her memory of yesterday guide her. She began with the simple pattern she had discovered, then added small variations, experimenting with timing and intensity. The music grew subtly, each note finding its place, weaving together in ways that surprised even her. For the first time, she noticed how the music seemed to respond to her emotions. When she was hesitant, the melody faltered, uncertain and fragile. When she let herself feel joy, even a tiny spark of it, the notes soared, resonating with a warmth that made her smile. She felt a deep connection with her own creation, as though the music was a living thing that existed between her fingers and the room. It was simple, but it was alive, and that gave her courage. She paused, leaning back on the bench, feeling her heart beat a little faster. Something about the way the melody developed made her feel as though she had uncovered a hidden part of herself. She took a deep breath and started again, this time allowing herself to make mistakes, to try ideas that might not work. Each small error taught her something, guiding her to better notes, better sequences. She began to see music not just as a series of keys and notes, but as a conversation with herself, a way to express feelings she had never found words for. Hours passed like minutes. She played, stopped, hummed along, and occasionally scribbled small notes in a notebook beside the piano. Sometimes she would stand and sway, lost in rhythm, feeling the music flow through her like water. She had never experienced this level of engagement before, this sense that she was truly creating something from within. And yet, the music remained simple in structure, approachable, familiar, like a quiet friend that had always been waiting for her to speak. Later that day, she thought about sharing a recording of what she had played. She hesitated, remembering past attempts to show her work, the polite encouragements that never quite turned into recognition. but something inside her urged her to try. She set up her phone to record, making sure the camera caught the piano and her hands as she played. She pressed record and let the music flow. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was honest, and that honesty gave the performance a strange power. After finishing, she listened to the recording, expecting the usual mix of self-doubt and minor satisfaction. But this time she felt something different. The tune had a gentle strength, a warmth that seemed to linger even after it stopped. She realized she had created a piece that could make someone else feel the same quiet wonder that she felt. A small smile crossed her face, and she felt a flutter of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this simple music than she had imagined. Encouraged, she shared the recording with a small group of friends, people she trusted to be honest. She didn't expect much, just a few kind words, but the responses surprised her. Messages arrived quickly, full of praise, astonishment, and curiosity. Some said they had chills listening to it, others asked her to play more. One friend even suggested she post it online, though she laughed nervously at the idea. She had never thought of herself as someone who could reach beyond her small circle, but the idea lingered in her mind. Over the next few days, she continued to play, refining her simple tune, adding little touches she hadn't considered before. Sometimes she would play for hours without stopping, other times just for a few minutes, exploring a new rhythm or chord. Each session seemed to reveal something new, a possibility she hadn't seen until she let herself experiment. She began to feel a quiet confidence, a sense that she could push herself further without losing the simplicity that made her music special. One afternoon, a neighbor knocked on her door unexpectedly. He was a local musician, someone she had seen in the building before but never spoken to. He had heard the faint sounds of her playing through the walls and was curious. She felt a flash of nervousness, but something inside her urged her to invite him in. He listened quietly as she played the simple tune she had been refining, and when she finished, he looked at her with surprise and admiration. "You have something special," he said simply. "It's simple, but it feels alive. There's emotion here, a kind of honesty that's rare. Don't underestimate it." His words stayed with her, echoing in her mind. She realized that she had been underestimating herself all along, thinking that simple music couldn't be meaningful, that she couldn't create something that touched others. The neighbor offered to help her record a higher quality version of her piece, something she had never dared to imagine. She agreed, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It was a step into unknown territory, but she was ready to take it. The process of recording was new and challenging. She had to think about not just playing, but how each note would sound in a polished version, how the music would translate to listeners who had never seen her play. At first, it was frustrating, each take revealing flaws she hadn't noticed before. But she learned from each mistake, adjusting her timing, her touch, and even her breathing. She discovered that the music wasn't just about the keys. It was about her presence, her emotions, the way she allowed herself to connect with each note. By the time the recording was finished, she felt exhausted but exhilarated. Listening to the playback, she was surprised by how different it sounded from the simple tune she had started with. It still carried the warmth and honesty of her original playing, but it had a clarity and depth that made it feel alive in a new way. She realized that what had begun as a quiet, private exploration had grown into something that could reach others, that could touch hearts in ways she hadn't imagined. Encouraged by the neighbor and her friends, she decided to share the recording online. She posted it with a brief note, almost apologetically, unsure of how it would be received. Within hours, messages began to pour in. People commented on the simplicity and beauty of the music, how it made them feel calm, nostalgic, or even inspired. She read each message carefully, feeling a strange mix of disbelief and joy. The music that had been just a private comfort was now touching lives in ways she had never imagined. The attention was gentle at first, but it grew steadily. People shared the recording with others, curious friends and strangers alike. Comments praised the emotional depth, the unexpected genius hidden in the simplicity. She was amazed and a little overwhelmed. She had never sought recognition, never dreamed that her quiet passion could have an impact beyond her small apartment. And yet, here it was undeniable and real. That evening, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, listening to the city as the sun dipped below the horizon. The music from the day lingered in her mind, a melody that had grown in ways she had never anticipated. She realized that the spark she had discovered the day before was no longer just a private flame. It had become something larger, something that could reach out and connect with others. She felt a quiet sense of wonder and possibility, a realization that her music, though simple, had the power to create a small ripple in the world. She knew that this was only the beginning. There was still so much to explore, so many melodies to discover, and so many ways to express herself. But for the first time, she felt a sense of direction, a purpose that went beyond private enjoyment. Her simple playing had opened a door, and she was ready to walk through it, to see where it might lead. She didn't know the full story yet, but she could feel that something extraordinary was quietly unfolding, and she was at the center of it, ready to embrace whatever came next. Days passed, and the recording continued to spread quietly at first, then more rapidly. She noticed messages arriving at all hours, comments full of admiration and curiosity. People she had never met were sharing the music, expressing how it made them feel. Some described it as soothing, others as inspiring. She read each one carefully, her heart swelling with disbelief and warmth. She had never expected her small experiment, her simple tunes, to resonate with anyone beyond her own circle of friends. Now she realized the music had a life of its own, reaching hearts she could not even see. At first, she felt overwhelmed by the attention. The notifications kept popping up, and each one reminded her of the reach her music now had. She tried not to let it distract her from the act of playing itself. The music had always been her refuge, a private place where she could explore her emotions and thoughts without judgment. But now, she faced a new challenge, sharing that part of herself with a wider audience and seeing it appreciated in ways she had never imagined. One afternoon, she received a message from someone who identified themselves as a local music producer. The note was polite but direct, expressing genuine interest in her work. They had heard the recording online and were impressed by the honesty and creativity in her playing. They suggested meeting to discuss the possibility of further collaboration. She read and reread the message, her mind racing with excitement and fear. She had never thought of herself as a professional musician. The idea of meeting someone who could help her reach a larger audience was thrilling, but also intimidating. She spent hours preparing mentally for the meeting. She thought about what she would say, how she would play, and how to convey the essence of her music without losing the simplicity that made it special. The day arrived, and she walked to the meeting place, her heart pounding in her chest. She carried with her nothing more than her ideas, her melodies, and the courage she had been quietly gathering over the past days. The producer greeted her warmly, and they talked about music, life, and creativity. They asked her to play, and she hesitated only briefly before sitting at the piano and letting her fingers flow. The piece she played was the one she had been refining, the one that had touched so many people online. It started with the familiar simple melody, then gradually expanded into variations she had experimented with, subtle changes that gave depth and emotion to the sound. As she played, she felt a strange sense of clarity and focus. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only her and the music. The producer watched quietly, their eyes wide with attention, and when she finished, they smiled. "You have something remarkable here," the producer said. "It's simple, yet it carries a depth that is rare. People will feel it, even without understanding every note. This could reach far beyond your expectations." She nodded, absorbing the words. For years, she had played quietly, doubting her own talent. Now, someone with experience and insight validated what she had always suspected, that her music could touch others in profound ways. The meeting ended with plans to record a professional version of her piece, to explore new compositions, and to see where her creativity could lead. She left feeling both exhilarated and nervous, unsure of what the future held but eager to find out. Back at her apartment, she sat at the piano again, fingers moving instinctively over the keys. She felt a new kind of energy, a mixture of anticipation and possibility. The music she had created was no longer confined to her small room. It had begun to take on a life of its own. She experimented with new melodies, improvising freely, and each attempt felt more confident than the last. The simple tunes she had once dismissed as ordinary were evolving, becoming more expressive and nuanced without losing the honesty that made them resonate. As days turned into weeks, the attention grew. More people found the recording online, sharing it with friends, commenting on its beauty and emotional impact. She received messages from people who said the music had helped them through difficult times, offering comfort and solace. Others expressed admiration for the unexpected creativity and genius that emerged from something so simple. She was amazed at the connection her music was creating, a bond between strangers brought together by sound and emotion. With the producer's guidance, she recorded a higher quality version of her piece. The process was both thrilling and challenging. She had to consider technical aspects she had never thought about before, from microphone placement to subtle adjustments in tempo and dynamics. Each take revealed new possibilities, and she learned to listen to her own playing with a critical ear. But through it all, she remained true to the simplicity and honesty that had made the music special in the first place. The result was a recording that captured both the depth of her emotions and the purity of her initial melody. The professional recording was shared online, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Listeners praised the emotional impact, the clarity, and the subtle genius in her composition. Comments described how the music made people feel understood, how it brought moments of peace and reflection. She was astonished by the reach and influence her simple creation now had. Her music, which had started as a private experiment, was now touching lives around the world. She began to receive invitations to perform in small venues, local music festivals, and even online broadcasts. Each opportunity was a new experience, a chance to share her music with people who had never heard it before. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness before each performance, but as soon as she began to play, the anxiety melted away. The notes flowed naturally, carrying both the simplicity she loved and the depth she had discovered through practice and encouragement. With each performance, her confidence grew. She realized that her music didn't need to be complex or flashy to be meaningful. The honesty, emotion, and thought she poured into each note were enough to create a lasting impression. People approached her after shows, thanking her for sharing the music, telling her how it had inspired them, or simply expressing admiration for the unexpected beauty she had created. She was humbled and amazed, realizing that the small, simple beginnings had led to something far beyond what she had imagined. In private moments, she reflected on how far she had come. The shy, self-doubting musician who once played quietly in her apartment was now someone whose music had the power to touch strangers, to inspire and comfort. She understood that the true value of her work lay not in recognition or fame, but in the connection it created. Every message, every comment, every expression of emotion was a testament to the power of honesty and simplicity. Even with growing attention, she remained grounded, returning to her piano daily, exploring new melodies, and refining her compositions. She allowed herself to make mistakes, to experiment, and to rediscover the joy of creation. She continued to share recordings with friends and online, always mindful of the authenticity that had brought her this far. The experience taught her that genius could emerge from simplicity, and that the courage to share something personal could lead to unexpected and wonderful outcomes. Her journey was still unfolding. Each day brought new opportunities, new listeners, and new melodies. She knew that she had discovered only the beginning of her potential, that her music could grow and evolve in ways she had yet to imagine. And through it all, she remained true to herself, embracing the simple joys and quiet moments that had first inspired her. Her music, once a private comfort, had become a bridge to others, a way to communicate without words, and a testament to the power of honesty, patience, and courage. The excitement from her growing recognition brought a new energy into her life. Each morning, she woke with the same gentle sunlight, but now it carried a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She approached the piano not just to play, but to explore, to push herself further into territories she had never dared to visit. The simple melodies that once defined her playing were now starting points, foundations upon which she could build something more expansive, more expressive. She experimented tirelessly, combining familiar tunes with unexpected rhythms and harmonies. At first, some ideas felt awkward, clumsy, or out of place. She would frown, erase notes, or start over, but she refused to stop. Each attempt taught her something, revealing hidden possibilities and subtle nuances that added depth to her music. She discovered that even a small change in timing or pressure on the keys could completely alter the emotion a melody conveyed. The process was slow, but she felt a quiet satisfaction with every small breakthrough. Her confidence grew with every experiment. Where she once doubted her instincts, she now trusted them. She allowed herself to improvise, to explore emotions that were sometimes messy, complicated, or unexpected. Her music began to reflect her inner life more authentically, carrying moments of joy, nostalgia, tension, and release. She realized that this evolution was not about creating something perfect or polished, but about creating something honest and alive. One evening, she received an invitation to perform at a small local event, a gathering of music enthusiasts and artists. She had performed before, but this felt different. The audience would not only be listening, but they would be open, expectant, and appreciative. She prepared carefully, spending days refining a new composition she had been developing. It was more complex than anything she had played before, weaving together layers of melody, harmony, and rhythm that still retained the simplicity at the heart of her music. The night of the performance arrived, and she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. As she stepped onto the small stage and sat at the piano, the room fell quiet. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of anticipation, and then began to play. The music flowed naturally, each note deliberate yet spontaneous, carrying the depth of her emotion and the refinement of her skill. She felt fully present, as though the music was speaking directly through her, bypassing thought and reaching straight to the heart. The audience was captivated. People leaned forward in their seats, some closing their eyes to fully absorb the sound. There were moments of silence where the room seemed to breathe with the music, each note lingering, resonating, and fading into the next. When she finished, there was a pause, followed by applause that was warm, sincere, and overwhelming. She felt a mixture of relief, joy, and amazement. The music that had started as a simple, private expression had grown into a piece that touched others profoundly. After the performance, people approached her, expressing how her music had moved them. One listener described how it had reminded them of a memory long forgotten. Another said it brought tears of joy. She listened quietly, humbled and amazed at the effect her creation had on others. The experience reinforced her belief that simplicity, when combined with honesty and emotion, could achieve something remarkable. She realized that she was capable of creating music that was both accessible and profound, something that could inspire and connect people in unexpected ways. Encouraged, she continued to develop new compositions, experimenting with different instruments, tones, and textures. She allowed herself to be vulnerable in her music, expressing feelings she had once kept hidden. Sometimes the process was frustrating, with hours spent exploring an idea that didn't work, but each struggle contributed to her growth. The act of creation itself became a source of joy, a way to understand herself and the world around her. She began recording her new compositions, paying attention to details she had overlooked before. She learned to layer sounds, to balance harmony and melody, and to create dynamics that brought her music to life. She collaborated with the producer occasionally, receiving guidance and technical advice, but she retained control over the artistic direction. She wanted the music to remain true to her vision, to retain the authenticity that had captured attention in the first place. Her online presence grew steadily. Listeners shared her new work, praising the evolution of her music and the genius hidden within her simple beginnings. Comments reflected admiration for her courage, creativity, and the emotional resonance of her compositions. She was astonished by the connection she had created, how her music could evoke emotions, memories, and inspiration in so many people. Each message, each comment, reinforced her belief in the power of honest expression and patient exploration. During this period, she also began mentoring herself, learning more about music theory, composition, and emotional storytelling through sound. She read books, watched performances, and experimented with different techniques. Each discovery enhanced her understanding and expanded her possibilities. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Growth required curiosity, dedication, and the willingness to explore uncharted territory. She embraced this challenge with enthusiasm, finding joy in each new lesson. Her friends and the producer noticed the transformation. Where she had once played cautiously and simply, she now approached the piano with confidence, imagination, and intuition. They encouraged her to consider larger projects, to perform in broader venues, and to continue sharing her music with the world. She listened, reflecting quietly, knowing that while recognition was gratifying, the true reward lay in the act of creation itself, in the music's ability to move both herself and others. As the months passed, she completed several new compositions, each more ambitious than the last. She experimented with themes, emotions, and techniques, allowing her simple beginnings to evolve into fully developed, nuanced pieces. The music became a reflection of her journey, humble in origin, but rich in emotion and expression. She performed in various settings, from intimate gatherings to larger audiences, each time discovering how her music could connect, comfort, and inspire. She often returned to the piano alone, revisiting her earliest melodies, reminding herself of the joy that simple music had brought. It was a grounding practice, a way to stay connected to the essence of her creativity. Even as her compositions became more complex and recognized, she never lost sight of the honesty, simplicity, and emotional resonance that had first sparked her journey. This balance between simplicity and depth became the hallmark of her music, a signature that listeners recognized and cherished. By the end of the year, she had transformed her simple tunes into a collection of compositions that were both technically impressive and emotionally profound. Her journey had taken her from private practice to public recognition, from quiet self-doubt to confident creation. She understood now that genius was not only about complexity or skill, but about authenticity, courage, and the willingness to explore the depths of her own expression. Her music had grown beyond what she had imagined, and with each new piece, she continued to surprise herself, discovering the extraordinary within the ordinary. Time moved steadily, but for her, every day felt filled with new discoveries. The music that had begun as a quiet, private habit had grown into a journey she could never have imagined. She woke each morning with curiosity and anticipation, eager to explore the next melody, the next idea. Her piano remained her closest companion, yet now it shared space with the wider world that had begun to notice her work. She felt both humility and pride, understanding that the beauty of her journey lay not just in recognition, but in the simple act of creation and connection. Her compositions continued to evolve. She experimented with subtle variations, combining simplicity with unexpected harmonies, exploring emotional depth without overcomplicating the sound. She learned to trust her instincts more than ever, letting intuition guide her fingers across the keys. The music flowed naturally, expressing joy, longing, hope, and reflection. She discovered that the power of her work came from its honesty, the ability to capture emotion in a way that was accessible to anyone who listened. Performances became part of her life. Each stage, whether small or large, was a place to share her journey and allow others to feel the emotions she poured into her music. She noticed the faces of her listeners, the way they leaned in, eyes closed, hearts open, and felt a quiet thrill knowing her creation could reach them so deeply. It was no longer about applause or attention, though those were nice. It was about connecting, creating a moment of shared understanding, a fleeting bridge between her world and theirs. She also began to inspire others in ways she hadn't expected. People who had discovered her recordings reached out, sharing how the music had helped them through difficult times, offering comfort when words were not enough. Some were musicians themselves, exploring their own creativity with renewed courage. Others were simply listeners, carrying her melodies with them through their days, finding solace or joy in the simple tunes that had grown into something far richer. She realized that music could travel in ways beyond her control, touching lives she could not even imagine. In private moments, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The shy musician who once hesitated to play beyond her living room had grown into someone confident in her abilities and open to sharing them with the world. She remembered the first simple melody, the one that had sparked this entire journey, and marveled at how it had transformed. That small, private creation had led her into a wider world of expression, learning, and connection. She understood that growth often begins in small, seemingly ordinary moments, yet has the potential to reach extraordinary places. She began mentoring herself more intentionally, studying music theory, learning new techniques, and experimenting with instruments she had once considered too complicated. Each new skill was incorporated into her simple yet profound style, enriching the emotional layers without diminishing the clarity and honesty that made her music special. She learned that genius could emerge not from complexity alone, but from thoughtful, patient development and a willingness to explore one's own inner world. The recognition she received continued to grow, but she approached it with grace and humility. Interviews, online features, and invitations to perform in broader venues arrived, yet she remained focused on the music itself. She understood that the attention was a byproduct of honest creation, not the purpose. Her goal was always to explore, to express, and to connect. The more she embraced this perspective, the more authentic and powerful her work became. Through her journey, she discovered the balance between private practice and public sharing. Time alone at the piano allowed her to develop ideas, experiment, and reflect. Time performing and sharing her music created moments of connection, allowing others to feel and respond. This balance became central to her life, a rhythm that kept her grounded while encouraging growth. She realized that true creativity required both solitude and interaction, introspection and expression. She also found joy in teaching herself to be flexible, to adapt to unexpected circumstances, and to listen carefully to feedback without losing her voice. Some suggestions were useful, others less so, but each offered a perspective she could consider. She learned that the journey of music was not just about notes and rhythms, but about listening, observing, and responding thoughtfully. She became more patient, more attuned to subtlety, and more confident in the choices she made. Her compositions began to reflect not only her personal experiences, but also the stories and emotions she absorbed from others. She was inspired by the lives of people around her, the small moments of beauty, struggle, and triumph she witnessed daily. She incorporated these feelings into her music, creating pieces that resonated broadly yet remained intimate, like a shared secret or a gentle touch. This ability to translate life into sound became a hallmark of her work, drawing listeners deeper into the emotional world she crafted. With every new project, she discovered aspects of herself she had not known. She understood that her creativity was limitless when guided by honesty and curiosity. She learned to embrace vulnerability, allowing herself to express feelings she had once kept hidden. Through this process, she gained confidence not only in her music, but in her ability to navigate life with authenticity and courage. Her journey became not just about music, but about understanding and embracing her own humanity. She also began to see the ripple effect of her work more clearly. People she would never meet shared her music, inspired by the honesty and emotion embedded in every note. Listeners found comfort, courage, and inspiration, often returning to her compositions during moments of reflection or challenge. She realized that her music had the power to create shared experiences, to connect strangers through emotion, and to touch lives in ways she had never imagined when she first sat at her piano with a simple tune. Over time, she continued to develop a library of compositions that ranged from quiet, introspective pieces to more dynamic and layered works. Each piece was a testament to her growth, both as a musician and as a human being. She marveled at how far she had come from the early days when she doubted her abilities and kept her music private. The transformation was profound, not because of fame or external validation, but because she had discovered her own voice and learned to share it courageously. Her story became an example of how small, ordinary beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. She had started with simple melodies, exploring music quietly and privately, and through patience, curiosity, and willingness to experiment, she had created works that resonated deeply with others. The journey reminded her that genius often emerges from dedication, honesty, and the courage to follow one's instincts, even when the path is uncertain. She continued to play, record, and share her music with passion and humility. Each day brought new opportunities to grow, new ideas to explore, and new ways to connect with others through sound. The journey was ongoing, and she embraced it fully, knowing that the act of creation was as important as recognition or acclaim. She understood that the true impact of her work lay in the moments of connection it fostered, the emotions it stirred, and the inspiration it provided to both herself and her listeners. In the quiet moments, when the piano was still and the room was filled with lingering notes, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with something so simple. She realized that the power of music was not in complexity alone, but in the honesty, emotion, and courage it carried. Her simple beginnings had led to a profound understanding of herself, her creativity, and her ability to touch others' lives. And in that realization, she found a deep and lasting sense of fulfillment, joy, and purpose, knowing that her music had become a bridge between hearts, a testament to the beauty of simple genius, and a quiet, enduring gift to the world.